This Jocks 94.5 podcast is brought to you by Millennium Satellite and Video. Log on to msbnow.com. TV excellence everywhere. That's Millennium. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning starts now.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. It is 9:36, Thursday, August 7th, right here on Jocks 94.5. Glad you're with us. Listen online, jocksfm.com. The app is in your app store, iPhone, Android. You can download that for free. Listen on the go. Also, watch us live on YouTube each and every morning. And then, if you need to go back and watch it throughout the course of the day, show lives there on YouTube. You can go back and check it that way. All right, Wilson Alexander covers the LSU Tigers. And, Wilson, we've been kind of kicking around Marcus Spears' comments a little bit earlier in the week, just that if you look at this LSU program, where they are, that if things don't go well, this fan base is kind of ready to turn on Brian Kelly. I'd just be interested to get your thoughts on that statement, where you think the temperature of the fan base is right now for he and his program.
Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily wrong. LSU fans are not a patient group, and that's kind of understandable when you've won 3 national championships under the previous 3 head coaches, all by their 4th season. And now here we are in Brian Kelly, year 4, and they haven't come close to really sniffing the playoff yet. If LSU doesn't do that after investing a lot into this roster, bringing back Garrett Nussmeier, all those things, there should have been a sufficient amount of time to build a roster that can compete for a playoff berth. And if LSU doesn't do that this year, then yes, I do think that a lot of the fan base is going to be kind of fed up. Now, does that mean LSU would actually move on from Brian Kelly? I don't know. I have some doubts about that, but the fans would not be pleased, that's for sure.
Looking at what is realistic, like what do the fans really want from this season? Is it to win a national championship? Is it to make the playoff? Like, what is success from the LSU fans' vantage point this season?
Success for an LSU fan is always winning the national championship. I think for somebody who is maybe trying to be more realistic, though, it's making the college football playoff. If LSU can do that, and then you get hot and we'll see how things go, then maybe they can actually do that, compete for a championship. But I think the key for them this year is to make the playoff. You certainly don't want to go 9-3 again. They're pretty tired of that around here after going 9-3 in the regular season during Brian Kelly's first 2 years and then 8-4 last year. They need to kind of take a step forward. I think that's the realistic expectation is to maybe win 10 games in the regular season to make the college football playoff. And that's not going to be easy to do, but I think that is what would be considered a successful season around here. Most of the fan base, anyhow, could accept that.
So when you look at this team, I think some adjustments are going to have to be made based on how it's been managed the last couple of seasons, specifically how things that we showed up and went wrong early in the season didn't really feel like that they were either altered or adjusted or replaced throughout the course of the year. What has to happen that's going to be a little bit different for how this team is managed based on a couple of the other Brian Kelly teams that he's had in Baton Rouge?
You mean managed in terms of things they're doing schematically, or like managed in terms of getting ready for the first game?
I'm not as big on if they lose the first game, the season's over. I mean, it's a tough opponent. I think Clemson's going to win the national championship. So that one wouldn't really bother me much. But whether it's finding balance offensively, whether it's playing different players at different times, finding a true home for certain players defensively, it feels like some things that have shown up in the first game that they lost have just kind of continued throughout the course of the year. Does Brian Kelly need to step in and make those adjustments himself? Does he need to put his foot down in different places? I just, from a management standpoint, that's the path I'm going down.
Yeah, no, he definitely needs to be able to find more balance offensively. LSU, outside of Jaden Daniels using his legs, has not been able to run the ball consistently or very efficiently for the first 3 years of Brian Kelly's tenure, and it became a glaring thing last year. We didn't have Jaden to make up for it. That's a huge part going into this season. We hear throughout the offseason down here a lot about how the offensive line is trying to be more physical, how they're trying to push people off the ball better in the run game. They're doing some things this year. I think they're trying to find went to try to find when they got Braylon Moore out of the portal and Josh Thompson as well at guard, guys who could maybe move when they're pulling a little bit better than what LSU had last year in Garrett Dellinger and a Miles Frazier and a DJ Chester on the interior. But at the same time, you're having to replace 4 offensive linemen. That's not going to be easy. But they talked about that a lot. I mean, Bo Bordelon said the other day that their job, they understand this, is to protect Nuss and run the dang, and that wasn't the word he used, but football. And that's what they're going to try to do. And they understand that that's a big thing. But also on the defensive side, they also do need to get some guys in better positions, I think, especially at safety. They need a lot better safety play, and they need to be able to make that defense take a step forward. And Brian Kelly, I think, does need to sort of manage how that goes all in a better way, because it hasn't been there yet during his time here.
Looking at what they can do defensively this year, and we've talked about balance offensively. We've talked about the challenges of replacing the pieces along the offensive line. I do think the continuity defensively, and there was progress made last year, I think they could take a huge step this year. What's stopping this group from becoming one of the top defenses in the SEC?
Well, if they aren't as much improved on the defensive line, that would obviously be a big one. They think they've got something really good in Bernard Gooden, defensive tackle transfer from South Florida. He's impressed them through the first week of camp, but he's not a big guy. Like, you need run stoppers there in the middle. They need Dominic McKinley, the second-year tackle who's 6'6" and max squatting 650 pounds. They need him to be able to do that. And they also need some of these other guys like Jacoby and Guillory, coming off of an ACL. Some of these big guys that they have on the line, they need to be able to stop the run. They need to be able to set the edge better. Jack Pyburn from Florida is going to be a big piece of that. That's a big thing for them. They have to be able to stop running quarterbacks. We saw that glaringly against South Carolina and Texas A&M and Alabama last year. At LSU wasn't able to do that, and they've got some more on the schedule this year that they're going to have to deal with. So those are some big things too. And then I think the safety play that I mentioned a minute ago has got to get better. They got to be able to take better angles, better routes to the football, and tackle better in space. There's some transfers back there to Marcus Cooley and A.J. Halsey, who are probably going to be the starters, and they need improved safety play in order to be able to do everything that Baker wants to do defensively.
When you look at that defense and some of the strengths, maybe some of the weaknesses we already referenced, what is Harold Perkins going to be for Blake Baker this year? Strength, question mark, weakness? What will we end up describing him as when this season's over, based on what you're hearing through camp?
Based on what we're seeing through camp so far, I'm starting to lean toward strength, and I'm hesitant to do so because, of how last year started and how he wasn't necessarily fantastic as a sophomore, even though he was a good player. But it seems like he's actually maybe, and I'm sort of like, cautioning against this because we don't want to like fully drink the Kool-Aid yet, but LSU's, using him in a few different spots. He's playing from that star position. He's even rushing off the edge at times. And he's being really disruptive from both places. In 7-on-7, he baited Garrett Nussmeier into an interception. He's been getting pressure off the edge when he's in that pass rush package. And then from that star position, he looks more decisive than he did when he was trying to play inside linebacker a year ago, or even when LSU kind of moved him out to strong side backer. And so he's not missing tackles from what we've seen, although they've only been in pads for like 2 days so far. It just looks like a better version, a more confident and decisive version of Harold Perkins than we maybe saw recently. From what I can tell so far, this has been one of his most disruptive camps at LSU, and so it's just really encouraging right now. And so I'm kind of leaning towards strength, but let's see how it plays out.
And that's the case. Finally, the offensive line. A lot of new pieces, 4 guys drafted off last year's group. How confident are they in that group?
Well, Brian Kelly said at SEC Media Days that he's bullish about the offensive line, but what we've seen so far would not necessarily be that way. They have mostly struggled through camp. It's been pretty. They had one good day this Monday. They protected Garrett Nussmeier pretty well, and when they did, the offense kind of clicked. But from what we've seen out there so far, the defense has won a lot of the reps, especially up front. It's been tough for LSU to consistently run the ball this far in camp, and they've popped some big runs here and there, but a lot of tackles for loss or 3, maybe working really hard for a 5-yard gain kind of plays. So the offensive line is going to have to just keep getting better here over the next few weeks. It has been the biggest concern on this team throughout the offseason, and nothing we've seen so far has changed that. That's still certainly a group that needs to be monitored closely and maybe be worried about going into that opener at Clemson.
Finally, Wilson, I saw some rumblings of Aaron Anderson a little bit dinged up earlier in the week. How serious is this? How concerned should LSU fans be about this? He's obviously a guy they're going to lean on in a lot of different ways.
No, not a high level of concern with his injury. Brian Kelly said that he had some inflammation in his knee. There was a knee injury that Aaron had as a freshman at Alabama that he had to have surgery for, And then Brian Kelly's theory is that after working a lot this summer, high volume, that it just kind of got inflamed. Brian Kelly described it to me as Aaron has a cranky knee, and they kind of just had to get that taken care of. He had some work done on it, some kind of minor stuff, and they held him out of practice up until he was supposed to return to practice yesterday. We don't know that for sure because practice was closed, but we'll be able to see on Friday if that was the case, if he was able to get back out there. Nothing that has been expressed as a concern to this point, and so that all signs are still pointing toward him. One of the things Brian Kelly said on early this week was that they think they've taken care of it for the rest of the year, that Aaron should not be affected. They might have to manage his workload between games, but you should see him out there every Saturday.
Any other health concerns so far in camp for LSU that we may not have heard about or that aren't really making as much noise?
Nothing other than the rumor mill around Garrett Nussmeier yesterday. I don't know if y'all saw that one. Took off like wildfire that he had, that his knee had exploded and he had torn his ACL and all that stuff, and that's not the case. He did get maybe a little bit dinged up yesterday. It was described to me as just a tweak, though. It'll be interesting to see if he has to miss any practice time, but it's not going to be something where we're worried about his status for the opener. Otherwise, LSU has, knock on wood for any LSU fans out there, been healthy to this point. Solomon Thomas, a freshman offensive lineman, has a foot injury, but that is all that has been out there so far.
The dreaded knee explosion. You never want that. Nobody wants to go through that.
Man, it was crazy yesterday. People were saying he had been airlifted to a hospital, and it was like, nope, he's in the quarterback room watching tape, from what I understand.
Crazy. Wilson, thank you so much for the time today. Great stuff. Look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks for having me. I'll have a good day.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, and Three-Man Front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.